Getting all the understanding of all these points, then we will have a review before choosing the correct one. Now the question says, what is Azure? So here if you look at the options, the global administrator role, then Azure AD privilege management is used in contoso.com. So we have user 1, 2 and 3, and user 1 is a member of group 1, user 2 is a member of group 2. User 3 also has no subscription role, but AD role has global administrator. The initial section of this video as well as in the previous.
Hello everyone and welcome to this video of 591 Lab. I am Manny and I'm thrilled to have you here. In this video, we are going to learn about privileged identity management, an important topic in the world of AZ-500. This video is categorized in two sections. First, we will talk about what is PIM and how to implement it. In the second section, our focus would be on AZ-500 certification exam preparation questions related to privileged identity management. Whether you are preparing for AZ-500 exam or you are a cloud or system admin, this video provides an insight you need. Before we begin, here we have our humble request to subscribe our channel, like the video and hit the notification bell. This helps us to create more contents like this to help you to excel in your cloud journey. Let us introduce ourselves first. We are 591 Lab and we are the top IT training and certification exam brand in China, Hong Kong, Taiwan and Singapore. Our mission is to provide our clients with exceptional exam preparation experience for certifications in Cisco, Huawei, Aruba, Juniper, Microsoft and Azure Cloud. To know about us in detail, please visit 591lab.com and subscribe this channel. So without spending any more time, let's start our learning experience. So here is the agenda for what we are going to learn. So first we will talk about what is privileged identity management or PIM. Then we will see how to enable or implement it in Azure portal. And after that we will have a look on different options and settings. And after getting all the understanding of all these points, then we will have a review of few questions related to AZ-500 exam preparations. So let's move to the next slide and to know what is PIM. So here, what is PIM? Privileged Identity Management is a service in Microsoft Entra ID that enables you to manage, control, and monitor access to important resources in your organization. It is a part of identity governance. To understand this, let's assume a situation where no PIM is implemented. So in our Azure Active Directory or Entra ID, we have one administrator, namely admin 1 with global administrator role. We have one more administrator, namely admin 2 without any admin role. We would like to assign an admin role to admin 2 so that he can perform some day-to-day admin work. For example, billing administrator role. To do this, all we need to ask admin 1 to assign the admin role, which is also a privileged role, to admin 2. It's plain and simple. However, there is a concern here. Billing administrator role will stick with admin 2 for 24/7. However, admin 2 does not necessarily using this privileged role round the clock. So having the privileged role assigned all the time is a security concern. So privileged identity management is an answer to this concern. Let's understand how it works or how privileged identity management is going to help us. So when PIM is implemented, admin 1, which is a global administrator role, not going to assign the role directly to the admin 2. Instead, admin 1 makes admin 2 eligible for the role. Eligibility does not mean that admin 2 has the role. This means admin 2 is eligible for the role and he has to raise the request to activate his role with defined number of hours. So for example, if admin 2 wants to do any admin work where he needs billing administrator role, then he sends the activation request and mention for how long he is going to need that role. Once it is approved, then only admin 2 is going to get the role. So it is basically providing the time-bound access to the resources. This approach fixes the concern of sticking with privileged role for 24/7. Also, admins can release their privileged role as soon as they are done with their work. Roles will also be going to be removed from the admins after the defined hours will be expired. Now, till now we have learned admin 1 with global administrator role is able to manage PIM for other users or admins. What if I would like to delegate this PIM management to a dedicated user or admin? Do I need to make him or her a global administrator? The answer is no. For this, we have a built-in role called Privileged Role Administrator. Let's have a look at few key points to remember in view of exam preparations. So, since August 2023, Microsoft has renamed Azure Active Directory to Microsoft Entra ID. To manage and implement PIM for other users and admins, either Global Administrator role or Privileged Role Administrator is required. To implement PIM, organizations must have Entra ID P2 license. And lastly, PIM can be used to manage Azure Active Directory or Entra ID role and Azure Resources role, which is called also RBAC roles. Now it is time to move to Azure portal and learn how to implement PIM. We are in our Azure portal. Before enabling the PIM, we need to verify two prerequisites. The first one is to ensure the user who has logged in must have Global Administrator role, and the license which is activated for Entra ID, it should be Microsoft Entra ID P2 license. Let's verify one by one. To verify if the user has the Global Administrator role or not, we need to search here for Entra ID, and this will give us this Microsoft Entra ID page. In this page, we need to go roles and administrators, and here search for Global Administrator, and then it will show us the name who or the user who has the Global Administrator role. So you can see here, this is the name and this is the ID, and this is the same ID which I used to log in. Now go back and check the license requirement. So to check the license requirement, you can also verify this information on this page which says the license is Microsoft Entra ID P2. Alternatively, you can also go to the license option here and then click on all product. And you can see here it is showing the Microsoft Entra ID P2. Here I need your attention on one more setting. You can see here there is a try and buy option. If you would like to do the lab at your home, then you can use this option. Click on this try and buy, and you can see here Microsoft is providing 1 month of free trial for license Microsoft Entra ID P2. Otherwise, Microsoft Entra P2 ID is paid license. To do your lab, you can activate this free trial and it will be enabled for 1 month. Now, after verifying both the requirement, it is time to enable Privileged Identity Management. To do this, we need to go to the home page of Microsoft Entra ID. Here, we need to look for Identity Governance. In the page of Identity Governance, you can find there is a section called Privileged Identity Management. It has Microsoft Entra roles, groups, and Azure resources. If we would like to enable Privileged Identity Management for Microsoft Entra roles, then we have to choose this option. If we would like to enable the Microsoft privileged identity management for Azure resources or RBAC roles, we have to choose the Azure resources. For this video, we are going to choose Microsoft Entra roles. Click on that Microsoft Entra roles and it will open a new page. Here, we need to go for the roles. So in our example, what we are going to choose is billing administrator. So what I would like to achieve here is I would like to assign billing administrator role to one of my admin, and I'm not going to directly assign it, as privileged identity management first makes the role eligible for the user. So let's do the eligibility assignment. So here, click on add assignment and select here no member selected. And you can see here these are my admins or the users listed in my Entra ID. Now I would like lab admin 1 to be eligible for the billing administrator role. So I will choose him and hit on select, and then going to click on next. Here I have two options, assignment type, which one is eligible and one is active. PIM makes the role eligible. So here we are going to choose eligible option. Additionally, we have one more option which says permanently eligible. So if we will keep this box checked, then lab admin 1 is going to have permanently eligibility for the billing administrator role. Again, this does not mean that lab admin 1 has the permanent assignment of that role. It's only the eligibility. Also, I can have the option to start and end the eligibility here. For this session, I'm going to keep permanent eligible. Then I'm going to hit on assign. It will take some time, and then it is assigned the role. To verify this, you can see here eligible assignment, and it is showing like lab admin 1, and here we are in the billing administrator page. So there is one more way to verify this. Click on the home page, go to the users, okay, click on the home page, then go to the users. It takes time, and then we know we have make lab admin 1 eligible for billing administrator role. So we are going to click on assigned roles, and you can see there is no active assignment. But if I look on the eligible assignment, I can see the billing administrator role is eligible. So lab admin 1 is eligible for billing administrator role. So this is the first part of the lab. Now we have enabled privileged identity management. Now let's go and check some settings in the roles, like what has changed after enabling the PIM. So let's go to the identity governance. Then inside the privileged identity management, choose the Entra roles, and then again choose the roles and search for the roles for which we have enabled the privileged identity management. In our case, it is billing administrator. Let it load first. It's taking some time. It's loaded now. So here we can see the lab admin 1 is assigned, and now if I go to the settings, okay, the setting is not working. So let's see, go to the settings. Okay, now you can see it's loading. So now we are in the role settings of the billing administrator, and here we are going to understand few things. So first thing is activation maximum duration, which means lab admin 1 can request for as of now maximum 8 hours. So whenever lab admin 1 is going to send the activation request for its billing administrator role, then that role can be activated by this setting for maximum 8 hours. We have the option to edit it. So the default option is 8 hours. We can reduce and increase the number of hours as per our requirement. So for example, if I'm going to make it like 10, then now if anybody is, or lab admin is going to send the activation request for its billing administrator role, then it is going to be for 10 hours. Other settings says, here you can see on activation what are the things required. First one is none, then Azure MFA, and then some conditional intra-ID access, which means if I would like to enforce the Azure multi-factor authentication upon the activation for the billing administrator role, then I can choose for this. But in our lab, we are simply going to do it none because we are not focusing on the Azure MFA in this video. Now you can also see we have the option require justification on activation, which means whenever lab admin 1 is going to do the activation or send the request for the activation, he has to mention some justification. Also, we have few options like require ticket information or require approval to activate, which means if lab admin 1 is going to send the activation request, this will go to some sort of approver, and that approver is going to approve the request, then only it is going to be approved. If no approver is mentioned here, then the request sent by lab admin 1 is going to be approved automatically. So just click on update and wait for the implementation. Now the role setting has been updated. So till now what we have done, we have done enable of PIM, we have make lab admin 1, which is our admin, as a billing administrator, but we have provided the eligibility. Now see, if lab admin 1 is going to log in, then how it will look from his point of view. So for that, I am going to open a new browser. So let me open a new browser in incognito mode. So here is the new browser, and I'm going to type or open the portal. So lab admin 1. I need to enter the password. So now I am logged in as a lab admin 1. If I would like to know what role I have, then I need to search for enter ID. Need to remember, here we are not logged in as a global administrator. We are logged in as our lab admin 1. And if I go to the users, so I can see all the users I have. If I click on lab admin 1, you can see here assigned roles, and there are no active assignments. But when we will click on eligible assignment, I can see the billing administrator is listed here. It means lab admin 1 is eligible for the billing administrator. Now let's go and check for other users. I'm just going to lab admin 2 and go to the assigned roles. Here also there are no active assignments, and if I click on eligible assignments, then I also don't have any entry here. You can see the no results, and in the active assignments also there should be no results. So it is going to take some time to load, depends on the Microsoft Azure portal. You can see here it's still not loaded, so just wait for a second. Yeah, okay, so it's not. So for lab admin 2, we can see there are no roles mentioned. However, for lab admin 1, we have seen the eligibility for the billing administrator is there. Now the next question is, how are we going to activate this billing administrator role, or how the lab admin 1 is going to activate the billing administrator role. So for that purpose, let it load first and then I'll show you the option. Okay, it's loaded here. So we need to go to homepage of the Entra ID, and again we need to look for identity governance. It will open the identity governance page. And inside the identity governance page, we need to click on Microsoft Entra roles. And now, as you can see, we are logged in as lab admin 1. So we need to click on my roles. And you can see it's showing eligible assignment as billing administrator. And again, just to verify, there is no active assignments. So if you go right towards this eligible assignment, you can see there is an option of activate. Click on activate. So this is the stage where lab admin 1 is going to request for the role assignment. So you can see here the duration is 10 hours, the same 10 hours which we have set from the global administrator user. Now it is up to me. Let's say if lab admin 1 wants to use this role only for 2 hours, then he can reduce it only up to 2 hours. And if you remember, we have told like we need to mention some reason, because this is one of the mandatory checkbox. We checked it. So just mention so I can say verify admin and then hit on activate. So you can see here, processing your request and activating your role, validating that your activation is successful, and activation completed successfully. So it's taking some time. Okay, it's completed now, and then it will refresh the page. So lab admin 1 has activated the billing administrator role for itself. Now I can see in the eligible role it is still here. So let's do a refresh. Sometimes it takes time. So then go to the active assignments, and you can see here the billing administrator role is showing here, and we have the option of deactivate. So let's say if billing administrator role, lab admin 1 is done with its work, then he can immediately deactivate the role as well by using this option. However, now lab admin 1 has a role of billing administrator. So in this example, or in this lab, what we have seen, like first we have enabled the privileged identity management. Then we have chosen our user or admin, which is lab admin 1, and we have assigned him a billing administrator role, but we have not activated the assignment. We have simply made the lab admin 1 as eligible assignment. And after that, lab admin 1, whenever lab admin 1 is going to log in, he has to come into the Entra ID homepage, then go to the identity governance, and then he has to see what role for which he is eligible, and then he need to activate it. Once he will activate, and he needs to mention the number of hours he need to use that, and then lab admin 1 will have that role assignment to him. So far we have seen how to enable PIM for an admin role and how to activate the eligible role. Let's have a look at notifications now. For that, we need to open settings page of that admin role. For that, we are going to do first identity governance. Then we need to go inside privileged identity management and Microsoft Entra roles. Here we'll go to the roles, and we will search for the role for which we have enabled privileged identity management. In our case, it is billing administrator. We'll click on that, and we'll get the option of settings here. We'll open the settings page and hit on edit button. In the edit button, we can see there is an option called notifications. So notifications plays an important role, and these are the options inside the notifications. Send notifications when members are assigned as eligible role to this role. So just to understand this, let's say when we have make lab admin 1 eligible for any role, then lab admin 1 is going to receive a notification like he has been eligible for this role now. Similarly, we have option send notification when eligible members activate the roles. Means if lab admin 1 is going to activate the role, then he's also going to get the notification, or the admin is also going to get the notification like somebody has activated its role. Just to show you here, I'm just going to share an example of an email looks like. Here is the example of the email. So let's say lab admin 1 has activated the billing administrator role, and then this notification is going to be received if the email ID is mentioned here. Also, you can see these are the default recipients and these are the additional recipients. In the additional recipients, we can simply mention the email ID for the people who we want to send the notification. So that's all about the notification. Now let's have a quick recap what we have learned so far. So here till now we have learned how to enable PIM for one intra ID role. We have also seen how to make the changes in the default settings of activation hours. Then we learned how to activate the role from users or admin portal. And then lastly, we have learned how to send the notifications. This is the first section which we have covered. Now we will move forward and we are going to look on the review questions which is going to relate it with AZ-500 certification exam preparations. Here is our first question to review. In exam, it is highly important to read the question carefully and understand all the given options before choosing the correct one. Now the question says, what is Azure AD Privileged Identity Management used for? So if you read this question carefully, it basically asking why we need to use the Privileged Identity Management or what the PIM does. Look at all the options: manage authentication mechanism in Azure AD, enforcing multi-factor authentication for Azure AD, configuring role-based access control for Azure resources, and managing and monitoring elevated access to Azure resources. If you go back in this video, in the initial slide, then we have talked about what is PIM. So let's quickly go and recap on this. Here, look at the definition. Privileged Identity Management is a service in Microsoft Entra ID that enables you to manage, control, and monitor access to important resources in your organization. So basically, PIM does management and control and monitoring of the access to the important resources in our organization. Now come back to the question and see what is the answer. So I'm pretty sure now you must have figured out what should be the answer, and the answer is managing and monitoring elevated access to Azure resources. That should be our answer. Now let's move to the next question. In question 2, we have your company recently created an Azure subscription. You have been tasked with making sure that specified user is able to implement Azure AD Privileged Identity Management. So if you read this question carefully, in this question they are asking like if you would like to give responsibility to any admin or any user to manage and implement the privileged identity management, then what role that user should have. Again, we have discussed in the same video, there are two prerequisites in order to implement privileged identity management. The first one is the user must have either global administrator role or privileged role administrator. And then the second one, Azure AD or Entra ID must have Microsoft Entra ID P2 license. So here if you look at the options, the global administrator role, the security administrator role, the password administrator role, and the compliance administrator role. So I'm sure till now you must have figured out which is our answer, and the correct answer is the global administrator role. Hope my explanation helps you to understand this question. But let's move to the next question. We are at question number 3, and here we have an Azure Active Directory tenant named contoso.com that contains the users, namely user 1, 2 and 3. So basically the first line says we have one Azure AD where we have 3 users where name is user 1, 2 and 3. Fine. Then Azure AD privilege management is used in contoso.com. So it's saying the privileged identity management is enabled. Fine. Let's move to the next line. In PIM, the password administrator role has the following settings. So if you read the question till this line, it says there is an organization contoso.com, and in that organization we have 3 users, user 1, user 2 and user 3, and PIM is enabled for the privileged role which is called password administrator. And these are the settings. It says maximum activation duration hours is equal to 2, which means password administrator role, whenever anybody is going to activate, then it can be activated only for 2 hours. Send email notifying admins to activation, which means if anybody is going to activate the role, is there any notification going on as an email? No, it says disable. Fine. The third option says require incident/request ticket number during the activation. Again, it is not going to happen because it is set to disable. The fourth option says require multi-factor authentication for activation. Yes, so whenever any user or admin is going to activate password administrator role, then it also needs to activate its MFA and authenticate its sign-in. Fine. The next option says require approval to activate this role. It says yes, which means whenever admin is going to activate its password administrator role, it is going to be approved by someone. So you can see here the selected approver is admin 1. So it means any user who is going to activate his password administrator role, it will go to admin 1 first to approve this, and then it will get activated. Fine. Till now we have understood the question. Now the next part of the question says you assign users the password administrator role as shown in the following table. Look at the table. So the user 1 has the assignment type active. Fine. User 2 has the assignment type eligible. Fine. And a user 3 has the assignment type eligible. Fine. Now let's move to the next section and see what are the answers options. Okay, so here it says for each of the following statements, we need to select yes if the statement is true and otherwise no. Fine, so let's read the first statement. When user 1 signs in, the user is assigned the password administrator role automatically. So here the option is talking about the user 1. So let's go and talk about user 1, and you can see the assignment type is active, which means if user 1 is signed in, then he does not or she does not need to activate its role because the assignment type is already active. And we know PIM makes the role eligible, and then user has to activate it by own. But if the assignment type is active, then it is directly assigned. Fine. So the first option should be yes. Okay. Then user 2 can request to activate the password administrator role. Look at the user 2. Okay, user 2 is eligible, and yes, if it is eligible, then the user 2 can request the activation. So the statement says user 2 can request to activate the password administrator role, and the answer should be yes. Okay, that's fine. Let's move to the next option. It says if user 3 wants to activate the password administrator role, the user can approve their own request. let's go back to the question. User 3 is eligible. So one thing is clear, that user 3 can initiate the activation for its password administrator role because user 3 is eligible. Now, if you look at the options, select approver is admin 1 and require approval to activate this role is enabled. So can user 3, when user 3 is going to activate its password administrator role, can this be approved in its own? No, because it has to first be approved by admin 1. So the option for this statement is also no. Let's look at the answers. So here, when user 1 signs in, the user is assigned the password role automatically. Yes. User 2 can request the activate the password administrator role. Yes. If user 3 wants to activate the password administrator role and the user approve their own request, no. So I hope my explanation helps you to clear an understanding of this question and the answer. Now let's move to the next question. Question 4 says, you have an Azure Active Directory tenant that contains the users shown in the following table. Good enough. We have user 1, 2 and 3, and user 1 is a member of group 1, user 2 is a member of group 2, and user 3 is a member of group 1 and 2 both. Fine. Next section says, from intra-ID privileged identity management, you configure the settings for the security administrator role as shown in the following exhibit. Okay, so we have enabled the PIM for security administrator. Good enough. Let's look at the settings. So we have activation settings here, and then we have assignment settings. Okay, so just have a read. So the activation maximum duration here is 5 hours. Fine. And there is no MFA enforced here, which is also fine. The next option is required justification on activation. So these are the options under the activation. Look at the assignment section. Here we have allow permanent eligible assignment, which is checked, fine. And then allow permanent active assignment, which is checked, which is also fine. And again, the last option says required justification on active assignment. Okay, so we understand these options. Let's read the more part of this question. It says, from PIM, you assign the security administrator role to the following groups. So PIM can, the security administrator role can be assigned to groups as well. So group 1, it is being assigned, and group 1 says active assignment type should be permanently assigned. And group 2 says eligible assignment type should be permanent eligible. So here, to understand this question, we have 3 users, 1, 2 and 3. User 1 belong to group 1, user 2 belong to group 2, and user 3 belong to both the groups. Fine. In group 1, we are choosing the active assignment type as permanently assigned. And in the group 2, we are choosing the assignment type as eligible. Right? So let's read the next section for answers. Okay. So for each of the following statements, select yes if the statement is true. Otherwise, no. Let's read out the first statement. User 1 can only activate the security administrator role in 5 hours. So look at this question again. So here we have activation maximum duration is 5 hours. Now read the statement again. User 1 can only activate the security administrator role in 5 hours. No, that's not it is for. So the activation hour here means when the user 1 will activate its security administrator role, then it is going to be there with the user for next 5 hours. There is no such limitation that you have to or the user has to enable or activate the security administrator role in 5 hours. So the answer should be no. Move to the next statement. If user 2 activates the security administrator role, the user will be assigned the role immediately. Let's look at the user 2. User 2 is a part of group 2 here, and group 2 says eligible assignment. Fine. So if user 2 activates the security administrator role, which means it is true, user 2 has the ability to activate the security administrator role. Then the question says the user will be assigned the role immediately. Yes, of course, because we have seen the moment you activate the role which you are for eligible, then it is going to be activated immediately. So the answer for this is going to be yes. The last statement says user 3 can activate the security administrator role. Look at the options. User 3 is a part of group 1 and group 2 both. And group 1 says the assignment type is active. And we know the moment you choose the assignment type as active, then the role is going to be permanent with that user. You do not get the option to, activate. So here, the user 3 is a part of group 1 and group 2, and the group 1 is going to enforce the permanent assignment of that role on user 3. So user 3 is not going to get the option to activate the role. So the answer should be no. So let's look at the answers. So here, user 1 can only activate the security administrator role in 5 hours. No, it's not the limitation. User 2 activates the security administrator role. And is it going to be assigned immediately? Yes. User 3 can activate the security administrator role? Nope. Okay, I hope this explanation helps you to understand this question. Let's move to the next question. Here we have the next question, which is you have an Azure subscription that contains the users shown in the following table. Okay, read the table. User 1 has a owner and Azure Active Directory user role with authentication administrator. Fine. And the multi-factor authentication is enabled. User 2 has no subscription role, but it has AD role, which is called global administrator. User 3 also has no subscription role, but AD role has global administrator. Now, which users can enable Azure AD privileged identity management? Okay, that's an easy one and the tricky one both. So if you look at the table, so it also says the multi-factor authentication status. So this piece of information is here to make us little bit confused. So we do not need to look at here. We are clearly know like global administrator role is the one which is required to enable privileged identity management. So let's look at which users has the global administrator role. So we can clearly see it is for user 2 and user 3. So it doesn't matter the multi-factor authentication is enabled, enforced or disabled for them. If they are assigned with the global administrator role, they are going to enable or they will be enabled to AD PIM. So the answer should be user 2 and 3 only. Okay, I hope my explanation helps you to understand the question and answers. Let's move to the next question. In this question, we have Azure subscription that uses Azure AD Privileged Identity Management. And we have a user named called user1, which is eligible for billing administrator role. So now we need to ensure the role can only be used for maximum of 2 hours. I think the question is pretty easy. We have seen in the initial section of this video as well as in the previous questions like how we can set the duration for activation. So if you look at the option, you can clearly get the idea which option is the right one. And the right answer is edit the role activation settings. So that brings us to the end of this session. So thank you for attending today's class at 591 Lab. We hope you found the material informative and helpful. Remember, practice is critical to mastering any new skill. So review the course content and keep practicing with 591 Lab help and support. If you have any questions or doubts or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact us. We appreciate your participation and look forward to seeing you in our future classes. Before signing off, there is one more humble request. If you like this video, please subscribe this channel, like the video and hit the notification bell tab Have a great day. Thank you.